Welcome to the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Future Leaders is part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, focusing on pharmacy student perspectives, interviews, and the future outlook of our pharmacy industry.
This is Eric Christianson, pharmacist and owner of MedEd101.com, and you're listening to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm your co-host, Tony Guerra, for the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast, broadcasting from DMAC's Ankeny campus. Connect with me on Twitter at Tony_PharmD or on YouTube at TonyPharmD, where you can find over 800 videos supporting my audiobook, Memorizing Pharmacology, and my new audiobook, How to Pronounce Drug Names, both available on Audible and Amazon. Eric Christianson is with us today, a clinical pharmacist passionate about patient safety, geriatrics, MTM, and clinical pharmacy. He's owner of the blog www.meded101.com, a valuable resource for practicing healthcare professionals and students alike interested in learning more about practical application of clinical pharmacy. He has 2 wonderful children and best wife in the world. Among his professional accomplishments, he is board certified in geriatrics and pharmacotherapy. He's been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, American Journal of Nursing, written an Amazon bestseller, Pharmacotherapy, Improving Medical Education Through Clinical Pharmacy Pearls, Case Studies, and Common Sense, and has helped thousands of nurses, pharmacists, and prescribers become better at medication management. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Hey, it's great to be here, Tony. Thanks for the invite.
I know we've had you on a couple of times, but we seem to wait 2 years between each session. So let's just start with everyone's leadership road is a little bit different. What's your road, and how did you get to where you are in terms of your work, and then, of course, the website?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, looking back at pharmacy school, I was typically much more introverted, obviously, type A personality, like a lot of people are in pharmacy school.
It's not uncommon.
Yeah, exactly. But, definitely a little bit more on the introverted side. So, being in every fraternity and going to everything and doing all that sort of thing. I didn't do that, maybe looking back, as much as I should have. So my leadership definitely didn't develop until after I was a pharmacist. So did rotations, did some long-term care consulting, MTM, worked with a group that did that, and anticipated actually going into retail before rotation started. But once I got out there doing clinical pharmacy work, helping people solve problems, and not being in the glut of retail, which was just a huge challenge for me. And honestly, I would stand there and stare at the clock. That's some of the challenges that I had with retail. I was just waiting for the day to be over.
Sure.
And for anybody looking, and deciding right now, or what should I do with my future, that was kind of a gauge for me. Just like, are you waiting for your job to get done and for the day to be over, or are you really engaged and enjoying what you do? And no matter what that is, I would say, seek to find that and go from there. So that was kind of how I got into the more clinical side. Was I really just found enjoyment with it. From that, worked for 3-4 years, 5 years, and then started seeing common questions from nurses at nursing homes. And I just kind of thought to myself, wouldn't it be really nice if I didn't have to answer all these questions over and over and over, the same questions over and over and over. And so I was just like, why not put them online? Well, you know what happens when you think about putting something online.
Sure.
Yeah. Paranoia. Okay, well, what if I screw up? What if I do this? What if I make a mistake? Obviously there's HIPAA, there's concerns with all this different stuff. So I actually sat on the idea probably for about 6 months to a year. just kind of mulling it over in my head, kind of the analysis portion of it. And finally, just one day I just said, screw it. I'm going to try it for 3 to 6 months. And I said, I'm going to do it every day. I'm going to work at it and try to provide a valuable resource for people. And here I am 3.5 years later, still working towards trying to get education out to people and really enjoying it.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about how you went and you wrote pharmacotherapy, improving medication education through clinical pharmacy pearls, case studies, and common sense. When I'm at the top 200 level, I'm teaching my students top 200. They don't have organic. My book, I was very lucky. It was a 2-for-1 on Audible. That means it goes from selling 15, 20 a day to 500 a day for a weekend. And that was fantastic. But you also have a bestseller, but you're on a completely different spectrum, I want to say, where you are working with BCPS level content. How do you put a book like that together? Because everything keeps changing so fast.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the so I primarily blog case scenarios, things like that. And in those case scenarios, obviously they're, limited in detail. You can't put everything you possibly want to put in there. And I think that's an important thing to recognize when you're providing recommendations and learning this stuff. We don't always know everything we want to know about a patient case, which is unfortunate, certainly. But at the same time, you've got to get something done throughout the day.
Sure.
So kind of learning that process is kind of what I try to teach, and what to do in certain situations, and kind of gauging the level of severity, of a drug interaction or different things like that. Just kind of blogged about the art of that, and then pulled in a lot of those case studies and stories for the book. And yeah, people have really liked it. And, honestly, I just keep it at a very inexpensive price, just because I really want people to have it and learn from it. A lot of people really have reached out to me and enjoyed the book. So, yeah, just a great way to get out there, get my name out there. Obviously, much like what you have done with your book, Tony.
What about this new? Let's talk a little bit about this new NAPLEX, the new changes. I believe it's now 6 hours long, more questions. But my understanding is that the questions didn't necessarily change. There's more of them. And now we're talking about a bit of fatigue in terms of case studies, much like you would, I guess, be, and it's a 6 hour day sitting down, but much like you would go case after case after case. How would you what would be the first thing you tell someone that's going to be taking the NAPLEX? When do they start studying, or when should they start studying?
Yeah, I would probably target an area in the ballpark of 3 to 6 months. With that said, how much you're able to study throughout the day is certainly an important factor. Also, take advantage of rotations. Students will definitely have some downtime. If there's areas that you're weak on, take advantage of that. Do a project on that. Do a presentation. Tell your preceptor. They're usually more than willing to work with you and do things you want to do. It might need to relate, to what your rotation is on. But yeah, most pharmacist preceptors I know, are going to be pretty open and actually probably pretty excited if you're asking and willing to take on and tackle new projects and educational things, and it's only going to benefit you. So specifically formally studying, I would probably target the 3 to 6 month range. Okay,
and then how do you pick what's first? So with something like It's been 20 years since I took the NAPLEX. It was a different thing. It had just changed from NAPLEX, NABPLEX, I think, to NAPLEX. It became electronic. I'm a very fast test taker. I finished by the half. They said, are you ready for your break? I said, I'm done. I was very comfortable with it. But some people are the exact opposite. They're very methodical, and that's very good in a clinical practitioner. But that maybe not necessarily be the best thing when you're trying to get through a test quickly. So how do you know what to study first? Because it's all the pathophysiologic states that you've had over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, that's a really good question too, and I can tell you what's worked. Yeah, from my experience, and then some of the struggles that folks will message me on Facebook and various things where students who maybe haven't passed the first time. So typically, I'm going to try to do some questions. Maybe you've got old exams or different things from various topics. Maybe you've bought a book. Full disclosure, I sell things on my website, so I obviously don't want to mislead or not state that. I sell things on my website. But with that, I would really look at some questions. And questions from a broad base. Everything that's going to be covered in the NAPLEX. And from that, hopefully, you can tease out really what your weaknesses are and what you're really uncomfortable with as far as questions being asked. And then I'm really going to target those areas first and try to maybe get a little better understanding of those topic areas. So that's where I would probably spend my time first. And then from that, once you feel comfortable with maybe target 5 to 10 topics, once you feel comfortable with that, then maybe start looking at those other topics and then getting a sense of where you're at with those.
In terms of rotations, you have to pick rotations as a P3. So you're late in your fall of your P3 year. You find out in spring of your P3 year which rotations, APPE rotations or APPE rotations, I've heard them called both ways, are best for the NAPLEX. And I just, which ones are the ones that are best? I know we've talked about practice ready, which is being able to do the clinical work that you do. But what is NAPLEX ready? How do you, know that you're there?
Yeah, I would highly encourage rotations that give you a variety of experiences, and I don't necessarily mean that it has to be 5 or 6 absolute 100% different ones. I would dig further, try to figure out who the preceptor is, and am I going to get challenged in multiple different ways and in multiple different areas. And I think that can definitely help you identify what areas you're good at, what areas you need some work in. So as far as selecting those rotations, I would say a variety and quality are two of the targets that I would look at.
How have you helped your those that contact you kind of get over the initial emotional hit that they're going to take? So I believe now that you have 45 days that you have to wait till you can retake. And I'm sure, we're those type A personalities, so we can immediately do the math of the amount of money that we've lost by not moving from intern to pharmacist. And it's
no doubt.
It's a very quick thing. But my concern for these students would be that now in some areas there's a little bit of a tighter job market. So there's an explanation that you have to do with your employer who's expecting, okay, you're going to pass the NAPLEX, you're going to pass MJPE. How do you counsel those students to kind of get back in there? And because I can imagine that, they've got to explain it to everyone. They've got to explain it to their wife, maybe their kids. My kids would be like, Daddy, did you pass your test? No, Daddy didn't pass his test. That would be a tough conversation. So have you been helping those students kind of get back on there and giving them a little bit of new life, new approach?
Yeah, failure sucks. That's for sure, and that's not a heartening message for people. But what I tell people is, I've tried to sell things on my website, and the first educational thing I launched, I tried it for 3 months. To sell a digital download, a PDF, and I sold 0.
Oh, well.
That's how many I sold. Obviously, I didn't know what I was doing, but I learned a lot from that. And folks that fail the NAPLEX will learn a lot about themselves.
Okay.
And like I said, that's not an exciting thing to hear. But it's part of life, and you do your best you can to learn from it. So my message has always been to those folks, you've come this far. You've gotten through hundreds to thousands of hurdles to get where they're at. You can do one more. So that's really my message is, get up the next day and don't really let yesterday's failures impact your plans for today or for tomorrow.
What about community? So online, I see communities that are studying for the NAPLEX together. There are certain, I think there's secret, not necessarily secret Facebook groups, but private Facebook groups. And we are connected now digitally, but as APPE students, they transform from residential students who have strong social networks to now everyone's everywhere, and we don't even necessarily know where they are if it weren't for Facebook. How have those students developed community that you've talked to?
Yeah, and I think that can be it's an advantage in some ways, and it's a disadvantage. But certainly the big advantage of that is, you might be able to connect with another student that has failed their NAPLEX. And, how did you get through it? What did you do? What was your strategy? And just kind of lean on them for coaching, advice, and encouragement is probably the thing that most people need. How do I keep going and not quit on this? So using and leveraging social media to look at that is an important thing. I do want to talk about groups. That's a good point you bring up. I studied in groups a little bit. Like I said, I was definitely a little more introverted throughout school and things like that. I really feel like I use groups pretty well. I would try to study in a group for 1 to 2 hours throughout school, at most, per day.
Okay.
I really think that if you start pushing that time frame, hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours with a group, I think you tend to talk about other things and what's going on, and who's having fun and what are you doing this weekend and all that sort of stuff. So I would say definitely try to put a limit, but groups can definitely be advantageous to throw questions back at each other and basically put you on the spot and give you a little bit more of that pressure. Do I know this? And they don't know that. I think that's a good peer pressure to have.
Both of us share something in common in that we're not necessarily at a pharmacy school, so we don't compete in terms of what we're providing. Okay, well, I'm trying to help my pharmacy students the best they can, but we really don't see the ties across pharmacy schools. What do you think we could do to maybe make things a little bit better so that instead of saying, okay, well, my pharmacy school scored this high on first-time NAPLEX rate versus your pharmacy school, which didn't, and I'm seeing that a little bit on the Reddit boards, on Student Doctor Network, even on Facebook. How can we collaborate? We talk about interprofessionalism, but I don't know that we do a good job of collaborating together as, even within a state or, the Midwest as a region is pretty tight. How do we collaborate together?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And with that, the competitiveness, I think, is going to get worse and worse as far as schools seeking, the best students that they can find. So I don't know if there's a great answer to that. I do think the Midwest maybe does do a little bit better as far as that. I guess I can't 100% speak for the East and West Coast. I'm definitely not an expert out in that area. But yeah, I mean, enhancing that community, learning from best practices. I obviously support schools getting better and providing better pharmacy students. And what do we do in clinical practice? We steal ideas from other pharmacists and people that we work with, whether it's an MD, whether it's a nurse. Wow, that's a cool idea. I got to ask that question when I'm talking to a patient. What a great way to put it. That's what we do. We share ideas and that's ultimately how we get better. We learn something from somebody else and apply it to our situation. So doing that and really providing schools sharing that information, I don't know how receptive and open colleges of pharmacy are to sharing exactly what they do. In all honesty, I've never had to ask them for that information, but it's what we do in clinical practice is share things. So, maybe we should do more of that within the colleges of pharmacy system.
Yeah, maybe we can leverage I was talking to Christine Demakilangan from U Sciences, or PCP, and she went out with outreach and physicians and nurses to be, and they went out to the community. So I wonder if these volunteer efforts that you get in your P2 year, your P3 year, you kind of get a jump on it. Because it sounds like to me, because I've never been a clinical pharmacist, I've been retail, but it sounds like it's more of a skill or even an art. I've heard that medicine is an art. So Can you tell me a little bit about the art of being a clinician? Because I feel like the better clinician you are, the better NAPLEX taker you are, rather than kind of approaching it as, how can I beat this test? It's more, how can I be the best clinician, making, quick decisions and things like that. And if you can make quick decisions in, ICU or something like that, then maybe you can make quick decisions on the test. So how do you become a good clinical pharmacist? I don't really know intuitively what that means. You're BCPS, so.
I would say the best thing for somebody is to be asked questions, and the best thing is to be asked really hard questions. And I honestly get a lot of them every day, and providing answers to those hard questions makes you better and really helps you prioritize. Okay, what's really important here? What's the most important thing that patient wants? Or what does that MD want that he's asking me? People want a solution to their problem. That's what they want. And, I think historically in pharmacy, it's been, that's the doctor's decision, and if you're presented limited information, that's really the challenge I have with, working retail pharmacy, because I do a little bit of that from time to time. That's a really hard thing to do, is provide a recommendation in retail pharmacy. How do you recommend an ACE inhibitor when you have no idea what their potassium is?
Sure.
I mean, it's a really hard thing to do, which, is one of the reasons why I obviously support, figuring out ways to integrate medical records and getting more access to records so pharmacists can make more confident recommendations that are relevant to a specific patient. But anyway, that's a little bit of a side tangent. But as far as, growing that clinical decision making, put yourself in spots where you have to decide what the best therapy is for this patient, and then bring that to somebody that has experience working clinically and see what they think. And then as you do that, that's the best way I learned. I was surrounded by really great people that had worked clinically for 10, 20, 30 years. And not a lot of people get that experience. And that's really what helped me. I would get a situation, I'd be uncomfortable, and I would say, here's kind of what I'm thinking or what I would do. How does that sound to you? And just kind of through that process, over years, you eventually get better and better and more comfortable with, what you're recommending. But it takes time, and to this day, you still learn things.
Okay.
Every single day, you learn things. So that's kind of my process is challenge yourself with good clinical questions. And ask yourself, what would I do in this situation? And before you go ask somebody else, develop your own plan, develop your own thought process, and then approach somebody that you're learning from with that. Say, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think?
Okay. Well, what's the best way for someone who does have these types of questions to contact you? What's the best contact information for you?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, MedEd 101. That's certainly a viable route. My email, mededucation101@gmail.com. You can certainly contact me there. Also, there's a contact tab through my website as well, meded101.com. So kind of a variety of ways. I am on Twitter as well. I probably don't check that as often as I should. Same with LinkedIn. So there's a variety of ways to track me down. If you don't get a response, just try again. It's
okay.
just like life. Just keep trying, and you'll get me.
Okay. So, what's your best ritual each day to keep your work on track? You've got 2 kids, wife, job, entrepreneurial business. What's your best daily ritual? Yeah,
morning is my time. 5:30 to 6. In that time frame, I usually get up and I really try to do the hard things early in the morning when I seem like I'm ready to go and are maybe at my highest energy peak. Some folks are definitely more night owls and a little more focused at that time, but morning with 2 little kids is definitely the time for me before they get up.
Okay, so the Brian Tracy Eat That Frog, I think is the
yeah.
Yeah. What's the best career advice you've ever received?
Oh, that's a good question. Find what you enjoy. If you enjoy what you're doing, that's really, in my mind, what life is about. Just enjoy what you do and work until you find that.
And then what inspires you?
People. Yeah. I look at some of the obstacles that I've had in my journey, in doing the blog, just, the everyday things of getting up and small little tasks that should take you about 5 minutes, but you sit in your head and you just bat it around in your head for 5 hours when it could have taken you 10, 15 minutes to do it. It's those frustrating things, and then I compare myself to other people that you run into throughout the day that are, maybe battling cancer or their loved one's sick or, whatever. And it's just like, yeah, my challenges really aren't that bad compared to other folks. So, those folks really inspire me to keep going and do things myself.
All right, Eric. Well, thanks again for being on the Pharmacy Podcast. I'm going to say what Todd did. We're going to have to not let 2 years go by since the next time, but our track record is not very good.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, exactly. Our results are pretty poor on that end. So
okay. Well, thanks again for being on the Pharmacy Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag Pharmacy Future Leaders.